Welcome to another session by Pinnacle Professional College, and today we'll be diving more into our series on public sector budgeting, accounting, and reporting. If you haven't watched our prior videos on public sector accounting, please do so. If you haven't subscribed to the channel as well, please take time to hit the red button, which is the subscribe button below, and then hit the notification bell so that you are notified anytime we post a video. Now let's move on to our conversation for today. We are continuing our series on the Ghana Integrated Financial Management Information System, GIFMS, and today we'll be talking about a few things surrounding that. So let's delve into it. Let's talk about project teams, right? Project teams around the GIFMS. Number one is the cultural change and process management team. One of the things that we need to understand is the GIFMS system is, it's a new and different system. And therefore, when people are moving from an old system to a new system, there's always some form of cultural changes. And we need to understand that there needs to be some form of process management. So there's a cultural change and process management team. There's also an IT technical team, right? You can't roll out a system without an IT or technical team. And then we also have what we call the payroll team. The payroll team, the budget team, you have the treasury and cash management team, and you have the legal team to deal with any legal issues that may arise as a result of the implementation or even the rollout of the system. So what are the responsibilities of these different teams? It's worth noting and worth understanding what the responsibilities are. So responsibilities of the cultural change and process management team. Number one, we have the project communications plan. One of the things that's key in process management and cultural change, as you know, is communicating. You need to communicate at every stage to manage the change process. Number two is the training plan and the overall coordination. That's also important. When people are moving from a legacy system to a new system, there needs to be training and some form of coordination. Number three, you have the implementation planning and coordination. In terms of implementing the system itself, there needs to be some form of planning and coordination to ensure things are done in a very, very organized and not in a haphazard manner. Now let's talk about the responsibilities of the IT technical team. What are the responsibilities of the IT technical team? Right. Number one is to design an organization structure to support an enterprise-wide system, right? To design an organization structure to support an enterprise-wide system. What does that mean? The IT technical team is supposed to design an infrastructure that will support systems across or the system across the enterprise or across the institution or across the government units that we are looking at. Number two, hardware, systems, and communication software. Right, that's one of the responsibilities to ensure that hardware, systems, and communication software are properly implemented and coordinated. Connectivity and interconnectivity infrastructure, that's also a responsibility of the IT technical team to ensure connectivity between the different systems or the different modules that we are looking at when it comes to the GIFMS. You are also looking at systems and technical testing as well, right? The IT technical team is supposed to test, to do their systems testing. Is the system able to achieve the functionalities that they have initially outlined? These are all questions that will be answered during testing. You also have in-house technical training, training on Oracle e-business suites, capacity building on IT resources, if applicable. So things around development of IT resources. Development of IT resources is very, very key, very, very key. Another thing they're also responsible for is data conversions and interfaces. right? We realized that one of the key features of the GIFMS system is that it helps for data, conversion and interface. So such that if you want to connect the GIFMS system to another data source, it allows for that interface. So data conversions and interface is totally a responsibility of the IT technical team. Another thing is business continuity planning and disaster recovery implementation. Business continuity planning and disaster recovery implementation. So another thing that the IT technical team does is to ensure that the system is robust enough to, to handle any disaster or any, unforeseen issues that may arise. It's very, very key. So these are some of the responsibilities of the IT technical team. Now let's look at the payroll team. The payroll team, what they do is they review processes employed to integrate the IPPD2 application with the newly implemented GIFMS technical platform. So they look at the integration of the IPPD2 application, its payroll platform, with the new GIFMS technical platform. Remember that we said that the GIFMS system allows for technical integration or technical interfacing. Number two is work with the finance and accounting team to ensure that the integration of the accounting aspects are successful and meet internal control objectives. So the payroll team does not exist in a silo, right? They work hand in hand with the finance and accounting team to ensure that, they are well integrated in terms of the accounting and internal control bits. Right. Number three is participate in and review results of tests to ensure that production payroll runs perform as expected after consolidation occurs. So one thing that they are responsible for is testing, testing. And what is the testing supposed to achieve? To ensure that payroll runs that are performed go as expected, they deliver as expected. They also participate on the HRMS planning team as applicable. HRMS planning team, the HR means human resource. They participate on their planning team as applicable. Then you have the budget team. Now, just think about it for a moment. What will the budget team do? What will the budget team do? Some of the things that they'll do is they'll select the budget preparation solution. That's what they will do. They'll select the budget preparation solution. Number two is they will define budgetary controls in budget module structures. They will define budgetary controls. So they give definition to the budgetary controls. They also, and in terms of controls, you have different types of controls. You have controls by time periods. And you have controls by total funding allowed, which is appropriations. And you have controls by available cash, which is related to treasury management. So they define budgetary controls. You have controls in budget model structures, which relates to revenue and expenditure. You have controls by time, which relates to allocations and releases. You have controls by total funding allowed, which relates to appropriations. You have controls by available cash, which relates to treasury or cash management. Then they also define releases. They define releases. So give definitions to releases. Number four, they also define required budget reports. So budget reporting sits with them. Budget reporting and queries sits with the budget team. So all things related to budgeting, really, the budget team is responsible. They are also key in business process improvements for budgets. Business process improvements for budgets. Then you also have user acceptance test development and execution. User acceptance test development and execution, right? What we call UAT. So UAT is basically a test done to ensure that everything is okay with the system to facilitate user acceptance. So the people who are going to use it must be able to accept the process once the necessary testing has been done to ensure that it meets user requirements. Number 7, implementation of budget modules. So they implement the budget modules at the central government level, at the MDA level, and at the MMDA level. They implement the budget modules. By this time, you should know that the GIFMS system has different modules, right? And one of them is the budget module. Now let's move on to the responsibilities of the Treasury and Cash Management Team. What are the responsibilities of the Treasury and Cash Management Team? Number 1 is to focus on the business areas of revenue. When you think about cash, there are some accounts you need to focus on. Number 1 is revenue. You have AR, you have Treasury and Cash Management itself, as well as interfaces and reporting. So you focus on these business areas: revenue, AR, and cash. Number 2 is business process improvement for cash management. Now, one of the things you'd see featuring in the responsibilities are business process improvements. So one of the key things that is supposed to be achieved is to constantly improve processes. So you see that different teams have different business process improvements. And in the case of the Treasury and Cash Management Team, they have a business process improvement for cash management. The budget team will have a business process improvement for the preparation of budgets, right? So number 3 is the implementation of cash management models at central government, MDAs, and local government. Implementation of cash management models at central government, MDAs, and local governments. Number 4 is identification of interfaces between Bank of Ghana and Government of Ghana. Identification of interfaces between the BOG and the Government of Ghana. So the Bank of Ghana has, some form of interface, or, the Bank of Ghana interfaces with the Government of Ghana. Then you also have a user acceptance test, development and execution. Testing is always key. Remember, we talked about user acceptance testing. Then definition of required cash management reports. So all reports and queries related to cash management sits with the Treasury and Cash Management Team. Now, what are some of the benefits of GIFMS? What are some of the benefits, right? Number 1 is it improves budgetary, financial management and reporting process. It improves the entire process around financial management, financial accounting, auditing, recording, and the budgetary process. It also provides reliable information to the central government and decentralized institutions. So because this is a single source system, it provides timely, accurate, and reliable information. And because you can go, everything is systematized, right? Everything is in a system, and it provides more reliable information. Number 3 is uniformity in accounting and reporting. Uniformity in accounting and reporting. One of the key things around the GIFMS project is standardization. With the introduction of what we call the chart of accounts, it introduces some form of standardization across all government units, from the central government to the MDAs to the MMDAs. Number 4 is to improve in accountability, control, tracking, monitoring, and auditing. It improves the entire control and monitoring of government finances. Number 5, it also ensures that ministries, departments, and agencies spend within their budgetary allocation. How? Because the GIFMS system allows for budgetary control. So there are budgetary controls that allows MDAs and MMMDAs to spend within their budgetary allocation, so that they don't go overboard what they've been allocated or overspent by just the introduction of budgetary controls. Very, very important. Number 6, it reduces manual process and duplication of efforts. The whole paper-based accounting and paper-based filing does not really work and is so manual. And so it reduces the manual process and the whole duplication of effort. Number 7, it matches disbursements with availability of revenues and improves efficiency in cash management. I think that's self-explanatory. One of the things that the GIFMS tool will do is that it improves efficiency in cash management and treasury management. Number 8 is it improves interaction between and among other financial management players. Right? It improves the interaction between financial management players such as the Bank of Ghana, the Ghana Revenue Authority, and the Public Procurement Authority. So it enhances the interaction with financial management players. Number 9 is it also helps with the enforcement of financial legislation, right? If you have a system that is able to house all your financial information, then it's easy for you to enforce financial legislation. Another important benefit is it also ensures the timely exchange of data information. It ensures the timely exchange of data and information. It ensures the timely exchange of data and information. Very, very key. Very, very important. The timely exchange of data and information. The timely exchange of data and information. Very, very important. Very, very important. Number 11 is it enhances and reinforces the internal control systems, which, obviously improves accountability. So it helps to better the internal control systems in public financial management. Number 12, it provides documentation of business processes, workflows. Because everything is in a system, you have documents of business processes, workflows and approvals. Number 13 is it also enhances budget preparation, monitoring, execution, and evaluation. It's very, very important. It gives the opportunity to prepare efficient and effective budgets, which you can monitor and evaluate. And the last benefit is that it provides for the ability to monitor projects and track them through the chart of accounts. Now, obviously, with all these benefits, you might be asking, what are some of the challenges? So some of the implementation challenges of the GIFMS system is that the initial cost of investment is very huge. It's very expensive, very, very expensive. Number 2 is that there's a high switching cost. So if you want to switch from your legacy system or your old system to this system, the cost is high. If you want to switch from the GIFMS to another system, the cost is high. The cost is very, very high. Another key challenge is behavioral challenges, right? Behavioral challenges. Obviously, when a new system is being rolled out like this, people do not want to change. So there's a resistance to this change. And people fear the unknown. People will be wondering, what kind of system is this? Is it going to take our jobs, etc.? So there are behavioral challenges when rolling out a system like GIFMS and just any other system, to be fair. The use of GIFMS under Section 13 of the Public Financial Management Regulation, GIFMS shall be the core electronic platform of the government. So that's the core electronic platform of the government, which will be used for budget preparation, budget execution, revenue management, expenditure administration, cash management, asset management, debt management, payroll, accounting and financial reporting, human resource management, and public investment management. So these are the uses, right? If you don't even remember the benefits and you are able to understand these uses, you can basically extend that knowledge into, writing or into explaining the benefits. So you have budget preparation, budget execution, revenue management, expenditure management, asset management, cash management, human resource management, accounting and financial reports, and public investment management, etc. These 11 uses are very, very important, and I'll plead with you to understand them or to know them. So these are the components. You can also call them the components of the GIFMS system, which we've already talked about in our previous discussion. What you need to know is that these components are listed, plus any other system that is also determined by the minister. And that's the number 11. You have all these components, the financial, payroll, etc. And the last one, which is number 11, is any other system that is determined by the minister. Now let's move on to another topic, which is public sector budgeting. Now, you might have learned about budgeting in previous courses like management accounting, financial accounting, whatever it is. Let's refresh our memory a bit on budgeting. What is a budget, first of all? What is a budget? So budget refers to a plan of an entity, right? It's basically a plan of an entity for a given period. It's a plan of an entity for a given period expressed in financial terms. It's basically a plan of an entity for a given period expressed in financial terms. It reviews the plan, the cost for attaining certain objectives, right? So refers to the plan of an entity for a given period. Then you also have forecasts. Usually we sometimes confuse forecasting with budgeting, but there's a slight difference. So forecast differs from budgeting, that forecast deals with the determination of events bound to happen, while a budget deals with events that are reasonable to make happen, right? Forecasting is an important tool in budgeting. So what is budgeting? Budgeting is basically the plan of an entity, right? Plan of an entity, right? It differs from forecasting because in forecasting, we are dealing with events that are bound to happen. These events are going to occur, and so you're able to forecast. With budget, you are only looking at events that are reasonable, have a reasonable likelihood of happening, that are reasonable to make happen. Okay, so that's the slight difference. One is bound to happen and one is reasonable to make happen. A very, very slight difference there, but forecasting is an important tool in budgeting. Now, what does government budget mean? What does government budget mean? What does government budget mean? What does it mean at all? It simply means the plans of government for the forthcoming year expressed in monetary terms. We said that a budget is basically a plan or a comprehensive plan expressed in financial terms or monetary terms. A government budget is basically a government document presenting the government proposed revenue and spending for a financial year that is often passed by the legislature or approved by the chief executive or president and presented by the finance minister to the nation. So a government budget is basically stating what are the proposed revenues and what is the proposed spending, and it is often passed by legislature and approved by the president and presented by the finance minister to the nation. It's very, 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 very important. That's why you have budget readings. The finance minister comes and presents the budget to the entire nation in parliament. It embodies an estimate of proposed expenditure for a given period and proposed means of financing them. It's also a way to look at it, right? You have your revenues and expenditure. It is a process by which government systematically relates the expenditure to the accomplishments of objectives. Now, what are the objectives? What are the objectives of, or the purpose of a public sector budget? What are the objectives? What's the purpose? Number one, we need to know that a budget may be prepared for the following purpose. Number one is that it's an economic and financial document. So it's through that document, you're able to tell the government policies and programs. Another purpose of the public sector budget is that it's a useful guide for the allocation of available resources. So when the finance minister reads the budget to the entire nation, you see that there are budget allocations made to different sectors of the economy. Number three, the government uses budget as a means of accountability, right? So the budget is a form of accountability, which means that in the budget, you say you spend or you allocate this amount to achieve this goal. And so after the year, you can go to the same budget and say, you said you spend $1 million on agriculture, and where is the money? And what were you able to achieve with the money, right? Number four, the public sector budget serves as a means to seek approval for making disbursements from the public fund. So the budget also serves as a record or a document that helps to seek approval for disbursements, because the money has to be disbursed from the public fund, and the public sector budget serves as that document to seek approval for the disbursement of the funds. Number five, it serves as the central reference point for the authorization and implementation of economic management objectives. So the budget is the central reference point for financial objectives. Number six, the budgeting establishes cost constraints for programs, activities, and operations. So the budget serves as some form of boundaries within which you can spend, right? And these boundaries or these constraints, what they do is they give the authority to spend within those limits. And what happens with budgeting is that because of that, you're able to compare your actual costs against your budgeted costs. And this constant monitoring and tracking goes on as a result. And so let's talk about the importance of government budgets. So the government budget has both economic and behavioral significance in public financial management. These include, number one, compliance to legal requirements. Number two is effective planning and control. It allows for effective planning and control. It also helps to coordinate government activities, right? That's what the budget does, because you realize that most of these activities are interrelated. So it helps to coordinate government activities. Number four, it also helps to communicate government plans and programs. The budget is a form of communication of government plans and programs, which we've already discussed. It also helps to motivate the managers and employees. So there are different allocations made to different sectors, and there are people who own this budget and are supposed to use their budgetary allocation for the intended objective of the government. So this budget serves as a motivation for them and to their employees to be able to achieve the objectives that were set out in the budget. Now, another thing that government budget does is to evaluate the programs, projects, and activities that were initially set out to be achieved. Now, what are some of the limitations of budgeting? It's costly, and in terms of time and financial resources, it's costly, right? It's very costly in terms of time and financial resources. Number two, it's also influenced by economic instability. It's heavily impacted by economic instability. So in situations where there's rising inflation, everything is going high and high and high, the budget becomes irrelevant, right? So maybe you budgeted that you'd use, let's say, a certain amount of money to buy tractors for rural agricultural development. And in times of inflation, things skyrocket. And so maybe you said you purchase 5 tractors. And because of inflation, you can only purchase 2 or purchase 1. So it somewhat renders the budget irrelevant for controlling. Number 3, behavioral effects in that the authorization of budget may be misapplied, right? So you have situations where there are behavioral issues. Sometimes the intended objective of the different activities in the budget are sometimes misapplied. So sometimes you see that people would be given, in the budget, it will say you have a budgetary allocation for this particular activity, and people will be doing different things. So this is behavioral changes or behavioral issues. Number 4, budget does not allow for flexibility in decision-making, as compliance is a must. So sometimes the budget is so rigid that it does not allow for flexibility. It states the activities to be performed, the budgetary allocations for it, and these things have to be, followed exactly because of compliance. They have to be followed exactly. So it does not necessarily allow for that flexibility in decision making. Number 5, budgets can easily become an end rather than a means to an end. The budgeting is not the goal, it's only a means to achieving our goals. But sometimes it can become the end. Sometimes it can become the end. Then you also have the legal frame for government budgeting. What's the legal frame for government budgeting? The legal frame for government. So government budgeting is a law. It's a law. Government budgeting is therefore a mandatory process. Budgeting is mandatory, under the Appropriation Act and the Finance Act. The requirement for budgeting is found in the provisions of Article 179 of the Constitution, Section 19 to 35 of Public Financial Management Act, and Part 5 of the Financial Administration Regulation 2004. So there's a legal frame for budgeting. Government budgeting is a law, it's therefore mandatory, and the requirements for budgeting is found in the Constitution. Now, so who are the role players in national budgeting? Who are the key players in national budget? Number 1 is the president and the cabinet. Number 2, the Minister of Finance. Number 3, Parliament and the public. You have the president, the Minister of Finance, the Parliament, and the public. And all of these people have their own roles. All of these people have their own. So what's the role of the president? What's the role of the president? The president is mandated by the Constitution to cause estimates of revenues and expenditures of the country and lay it before Parliament at least 1 month to the end of the current financial year. So he's mandated by the Constitution. That's a constitutional mandate to cause the estimates of revenues and expenditures. The president would then receive the budget framework policy and approve it together with the budget. Together with the cabinet, So the president receives the budget framework policy. The president will review it and then approve it together with cabinet. Then the president reviews the draft estimates as well. So the president look at the draft estimates because the budget will have draft estimates. The president will review it, make sure everything is okay. And the president also approves and signs the final budget for submission to the Parliament. So the preparation of the budget goes through quite a number of phases. There will be the draft estimates and there will be the final budgets. The president will review the draft estimates, make sure everything is fine. And then if there are any changes that need to be made, they are made, and then a final budget is put together. The president will approve or sign this final budget, and then it will be submitted to Parliament. Now let's look at the role of the finance minister. The role of the finance minister. He or she will develop the budgeting framework policy and submit it to the president. And the president will then review it. The Minister of Finance, or he or she, will issue budget circulars or instructions to head of departments. They will issue budget circulars or instructions to head of department. Number 3, the Minister of Finance will receive budget proposals from head of department through the sector ministers, right? The Minister of Finance will receive budget proposals. He or she will receive budget proposals. Number 4 is the Minister of Finance is responsible for organizing the budget hearing, right? Number 5, the Minister of Finance will prepare a draft consolidated budget and submit to Cabinet for review. Remember, I said that the budget preparation process goes through a number of steps. So the Minister of Finance will prepare the draft consolidated budget and then go ahead and submit it to Cabinet for review. Number 6, the Minister of Finance is also responsible for submitting and presenting the proposed budget to Parliament. And this is what sometimes you watch on TV or listen to on the radio, the budget, when the budget is being presented to Parliament. Number 7, the Minister of Finance issues warrants and cash release instructions for the commitment and disbursement of funds. So the Minister of Finance issues cash release instructions for disbursement of funds. Number 8, the Minister of Finance is also responsible for preparing and submitting to Parliament supplementary estimates. So sometimes there will be some additional or supplementary estimates, and the Minister of Finance will submit this to Parliament. Right. The last thing is that the Minister of Finance also monitors and controls the budget and controls budget performance at large. So monitoring and control of budget performance sits with the Minister of Finance. Now let's look at the role of heads of departments. The role of heads of department. The head of departments are responsible for the preparation and implementation of their department budgets. So they are looking at their department budgets and they are responsible for preparing and implementing that. So heads of departments are regarded as vote controllers, very, very important. They are responsible for the preparation and implementation of their department budgets. The head of departments are required to establish budget committees in their departments. They are required to establish budget committees in their departments. And so who are the budget committees? The budget committees are simply a covered entity. Basically, they are basically a committee, which consists of the principal spending officer and the heads of budget management centers or cost centers. So a covered entity will establish a budget committee. A budget committee is basically comprises of, 2 main parties here, the principal spending officer and the heads of budget management centers or cost centers. So the principal spending officer plus the different cost centers, or what you call the heads of budget management centers, right? And the heads of departments are required to establish these budget committees in their departments. It's very, very important. Now, what are the functions and role of budget committees? What are the functions and roles of budget committees? Number 1 is to review and formulate strategic plans based on government policy, right? So they review the strategic plans, they formulate strategic plans as well. They also review revenue collecting activities. And when you think about budgeting, you also think about the allocation of resources. So they also allocate resources based on objectives. They consolidate and coordinate their budget. And they also monitor and evaluate budget performance. Another key thing that they do, which is very important to highlight here, is that they present a quarterly report to a principal account holder. They present quarterly reports. It's very, very important. Now let's look at some roles of the heads of departments. Specific roles include they make estimates of department revenue expenditure. So they make estimates. What are the department revenue estimates and what are the department expenditure estimates? They develop departmental budget instructions in line with the Ministry of Finance budget guidelines. They also submit estimates to the Minister of Finance, right? Remember that these heads of departments also have their departmental budget. So they submit estimates to the Minister of Finance. They participate in budget hearing and defend estimates of the department. So there will be a budget hearing, which is like a meeting where you explain the different budget estimates that you have in your budget and then defend it. Do the activities in your budget make sense? Why do we need them in the budget? Why do we need to spend on them? They also exercise budgetary control over the departmental activities. So they exercise that form of budgetary control or oversight over the department's activities. Now, what is the role of the parliament? What is the role of the parliament? Number one, the parliament receives appropriation on the finance bill. They receive that bill and they examine budget proposals. Very, very important. So the budget proposals, when it comes to parliament, they examine it and debate it. They debate budget proposals to see if this proposal actually makes sense. And when they are okay with it, they can approve the budget. They can approve the budget. So they receive appropriation and finance bill, they examine, debate budget proposals and approve the budget. So this is where we would bring our conversation around public sector budgeting. We would continue in our next lecture, the role of the public. And then if you haven't subscribed to this channel, please do so. If you are gaining value from this channel, please share with your friends, subscribe to this channel, and have a good day. Bye-bye.